social movements always start out with good ideas, like giving women choices and opportunities and all that stuff, and then they always get taken over by the left. While I was in Austria, this article came out in Compact magazine, which was interesting in itself, that was kind of the most important article of the week, and everybody was talking about it, and it came from an online magazine as opposed to, the New Yorker or Atlantic or anything like that. And as I say, it was called The Great Feminization. You may remember Helen Andrews. I think she was on the show after she wrote the book Boomers. Very smart lady, very crusty in a lot of ways, but also just sharp. She's just a person who says sharp things. And she made this speech at NatCon, which is what the article was based on. And she talked about this as an unprecedented movement, an unprecedented moment. There's cut two.
There have been many societies that have been feminist to one degree or another, in which women have been queens and owned businesses and held positions of authority that commanded the respect of men. But there has never been a society in which women hold as much political power as they do today. Think of all of the parliaments that have ever existed, every legislature in every country in every century. None of them has been, as ours is, 1/3 female. The idea of a female chief of police would have seemed very strange even to many early feminists, and yet today the police department is led by a woman in the largest city in America and in the city in which we are now standing. Law schools today are majority female. Law firm associates are majority female. Medical schools are majority female. Women earn a majority of BAs and PhDs. College faculty are majority female.
This is something that's kind of obvious, but it's overwhelming when you start to think about it. All these places are majority female. Now, some of you may have noticed this, that men and women are very different. They're very different kinds of people. In fact, they're the only different kinds of people there are. There are only two kinds of people in the world. One is men and one is women. Everybody else is kind of aligned. You have more in common with a man your age from Japan than you do with a woman your age from America. I mean, it's just, if you're a man, it is just the great divide in human history. Every myth, every creation myth starts with the creation of man and woman. It's the most obvious thing, no matter how hard, whether it's communists or communists, they always try to erase that difference. And even capitalists, as I've said before, even capitalists don't like the priorities of women because they don't necessarily feed into profit and the competition that makes capitalism work. So because men and women are different, if you feminize an industry, if it becomes majority feminine, the industry is going to change. And that change is, according to Helen, is wokeness. And what the uprise of the woke comes along with the feminization of several industries. So this is cut 3.
If you want to put it in a single sentence, you could say that feminization equals wokeness. Everything you think of as wokeness is simply an epiphenomenon of demographic feminization. Think about all the things that wokeness means. Valuing empathy over rationality, safety over risk, conformity and cohesion over competition and hierarchy. All of these things are privileging the feminine over the masculine. So if you have ever wondered why wokeness appeared out of nowhere when it did, that is my hypothesis, that all of the institutions that began admitting women in the 1970s eventually got enough women that they were able to reorient them.
Now think about this for a minute, because again, this is Helen Andrews. She makes a joke, and the joke is, she says, because behind her are sitting all these guys in suits and ties, looking like they wish they were anywhere else. They're just looking like, oh my God, I can't believe, I don't want to be associated with this. They're just absolutely, you can see them almost sweating. And she makes a joke. She says, now I'm going to say something controversial, and everybody laughs. But then she talks about the fact that nothing she has said is controversial. It's not controversial to say that men and women are different. It's not controversial. It's simply been banned. The thought, idea, the fact, the obvious fact, the most obvious fact in human life, the most important fact in human life, the most joyful and beautiful fact in human life, that men and women are different, has been banned. But it's not controversial. We all know it's true. As my son once said to me, if a scientific paper came out that was peer-reviewed and gone over 1 million times saying men and women were the same, it would have no effect, because we all know that is not the case. If you're a homeowner, you need to listen to this. In today's AI and cyber world, scammers are stealing home titles, and your equity is the target. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on just one document. Use a fake notary stamp. Pay a small fee with your county, and just like that, your home title has been transferred out of your name. Then they take out loans using your equity or even sell your property, and you won't even know it's happened until you get a collection or foreclosure notice. So when's the last time you checked on your home title? If your answer is never, like most of us, you need to do something about it right now. That's why I've partnered with Home Title Lock, so you can find out today if you're already a victim. I know what it is like to get a repossession notice out of the blue. It is really, really unpleasant, especially if it's not your fault. So use my promo code Klavan at HometitleLock.com, and you'll get a free title history report and a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud does happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. Don't be a victim. Protect your equity today. Go to HometitleLock.com and use promo code Klavan. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code, how do you spell it? It's Klavan. So the second thing she says is when a business becomes feminized, when it becomes majority feminine, it will start to take on some of those feminine traits. That too is an obvious point. Wouldn't that be the case, right? If everybody in the room were 8 feet tall, that would change the nature of the room. If people are different and there are only two kinds of people, then that's going to change the nature of the business that they're in. What's controversial, she says, is it's okay to notice these things, and I'm not sure I agree with her about that. They've tried to make it un-okay, but they were forced into making it okay. She says, okay to notice these things, but you're not allowed to notice them unless you say they're good. So if you say, well, there's many more women in the legal industry now, isn't that wonderful? Then you're allowed to say it. But it becomes controversial when you say it's a bad thing. And she explains why she thinks it's a bad thing. Let's cut 4.
Feminization is not just an interesting new development that has had some pluses and minuses. It's that feminization, in the case of many important institutions, is a bad thing. In a few cases, it is so bad as to be, to threaten the end of civilization. The rule of law, for example, is a very important thing. It's also very fragile. It requires a deep commitment to objectivity and clear rules, even when those rules yield an outcome that is not nice. I do not want judges who are more interested in context and relationships than in what the law says.
Now, the other thing she adds in her article, which she doesn't say in her speech, is that when feminine values take over, the purpose of the industry suddenly comes in second. So in other words, as she was saying about the law, if you're worried about being nice, if you're worried about collegial relations, if you're worried about the fact, whether or not the facts are the important things or whether the feelings are the important thing. She cites the Brett Kavanaugh hearing where men were saying, well, he may or may not have done something bad, but there's no facts. There are literally no facts. I mean, as Molly Hemingway pointed out, there was absolutely no evidence that he had ever met the woman who was accusing him. And as Helen says, what the women were worried about is, yes, but she's crying. Yes, but she's hurt. Yes, but she's obviously very sincere, and therefore he's guilty. And that was exactly what you read every morning in the New York Times, that he was obviously guilty because women had been disbelieved in the past, and therefore they were being disbelieved now. And all of those things didn't matter to men who were saying, I'm not hearing any evidence at all. That not only changes the nature of the business, but it takes the telos of the business, the purpose of the business, and makes it second, which is what's happened, for instance, in news, in television news. Now they're going to explain to us what we should believe. They're going to tell us the news we should hear that will make us feel the things we should feel instead of the news. That's the difference. Now, the other thing she says is she talks about the fact that feminization lowers standards. And let's take a listen to this, cut 5.
There certainly are many women who have the talent and the inclination to meet the old standards. There are many women who are excellent judges. I know many female journalists who are just as hard-nosed and uncompromising as any of their male peers. There definitely are such women. but I am not sure that there are enough of them. Because the question is not, can some women be excellent professors? The question is it possible to have an academia that is majority female and is still as committed to, and still respects the unhindered pursuit of unpopular truths as much as the old predominantly male academia did? I believe the answer is no.
This is the question of scale. Is something that could be good in the small scale, does it remain good in the large scale? And that's what I'm going to talk about in the next chapter, because this thing, of all the subjects that haunt me as somebody who watches politics and cares very much about this country and cares very much about the politics of this country, the question of scale is the one that haunts me the most because I cannot solve it. I have an idea how it can be solved. And people, whenever I say things like this, people write in and say, well, you solve it this way, this way, this way. And I think like, yeah, I thought of all those ways, but they actually don't work. And I will explain why, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Let me just finish this part about Helen Andrews and her speech about the feminization, the great feminization, by saying she actually has some practical solutions. And the solutions are not that women should be banned from any profession, because that's not the way we want it to be. I mean, these social movements always start out with good ideas, like giving women's choices and opportunities and all that stuff, and then they always get taken over by the left, at which point they become about, oh, men are toxic, the family's toxic, we've got to destroy the family, we've got to get women out of the house, which is an old Marxist idea. Because those are the bastions of freedom. The home is the bastion of freedom. Motherhood is the center of human life, and raising children and having a home is the center of human life, and all those things you have to destroy if you want to replace human values with socialist values. So what she says is simple. She says, we've got to take our thumb off the scale. We've got to get rid of laws that require women to be represented in certain numbers. So if you don't have enough women in your business, you can be sued. And men and businesses have been sued, and they have to pay up a lot of money simply because there aren't enough women there. This is this idea that disparate outcomes must reflect bigotry, which is nonsense. It's like saying there are too many tall people on our basketball team. It just may be that the people who came in, the people you know, did a better job. And it may be that men do a better job at some things than women. And it may just be that an over-feminized shop doesn't go as well. So that's one thing. If you just take that away and say, hire the people you want, hire the people you like, hire the people who do the best job, that will solve part of the problem. And the other thing she talks about, and this is something very dear to my heart, is the two-income trap. That the fact that it is very, very difficult for a young couple to make enough money so that a mom can stay with her children without going back to work after even 6 months, which is just absolutely wrenching. And some people have speculated, and I think it's a good speculation, that the reason women are having so few children is they cannot stand the trauma of leaving them behind. I do not understand how women do that, and twice, because sometimes I speak without thinking. That is like the flip side of my being a frank person, is that I sometimes speak without thinking. Twice, I have walked in on women who have just had babies and found them back at work and have blurted out without thinking, what are you doing here? And they have burst into tears. And that shouldn't be. I'm sorry, that shouldn't be. When you have a baby, almost every woman wants to stay with that baby and raise that baby. And it's a period, a season in a woman's life. It doesn't last very long. It lasts 10, 15 years before the children start to go off on their own, start to have things to do outside the house. And then, she wants to work and do other things. But that season is cherished by most women, and it is formative for all children. And so I think that is the thing, getting rid of the two-income trap, so women can do what they want to do instead of what they have to do. So what she is talking about is a great failure in our politics. The absolute. I've been an anti-feminist for years, and again, it's not being anti-feminist, it's not being anti-women, it's being pro-femininity. It is being pro the differences, vive la difference between men and women, and wanting women to have the things that they find out sometimes too late that they actually want. There was just a story about a very famous feminist in Britain who was talking talking about how she had spent all her money, trying to find a man now that she's 50 or 60 and couldn't do it and had spent herself broke trying to do it. And sometimes women find out this stuff too late because they believe what the culture is selling them. But let me get back to this question of scale, which I think is the central question that we're struggling with as we struggle to break away from what the left has almost made us. For more Klavan-y goodness, like and subscribe. And for even more Klavan-y goodness, subscribe to The Andrew Klavan Show wherever you get your podcasts.